So we are going to do these get questions from Throughput Accounting. But before we start with Throughput Accounting, just a very quick note. I mean, you guys have already seen your ABC costing, and few things there are which I want you to, how to say, keep in consideration. Activity-based costing is more suitable in service businesses. More suitable, I said. Activity-based costing is actually an advanced form of absorption costing. We also covered that thing. The things which you should remember about activity-based costing is that number one, activity-based costing is more about the correct allocation of overheads, because absorption costing was not treating the overheads accurately, and activity-based costing, it deals primarily with the allocation of overheads, number one. And number two, in absorption costing, we were only adding the production overheads, fixed production overheads. Your OAR was primarily about fixed production overhead. Whereas in activity-based costing, it is not only about production overheads, it is also about non-production overheads. So ABC, it does two things. Number one, that it charges or it allocates the overheads more accurately. And number two, in activity-based costing, we also include the non-production overheads, which we were not using in absorption costing. So this is just a brief thing about activity-based costing. Coming to throughput accounting generally is more suitable for the production businesses, large scale production businesses, where you want to see your contribution generated per hour. I mean, the businesses are so huge in size that you do not plan on annual basis, you do not plan on monthly basis. Even the results for 1 hour, they matter a lot, because the size and scale of overheads is too much. And in order to control, plan, monitor, you want to do it so fast. I mean, so fast as like hourly contribution per hour, throughput per hour, or probably throughput per day, or maybe throughput per week. So weekly, daily, hourly basis, because of the size and scale. And the idea in throughput accounting was that most of the costs are fixed cost. Only material is the variable thing. Only material. We assume that, if you do not do production, what you save is only your material. All other costs are assumed to be fixed. We say that labor is not a variable cost. I mean, in general, in traditional costing, we said that labor is a variable cost. In throughput, we say that in the short run, you cannot, just if you don't have work, if you don't produce, you cannot tell your labor to go away. You keep them on board, you pay them salaries. So whether they work 8 hours, they work 6 hours, they work 4 hours, you have to pay them a fixed cost. So labor becomes a fixed cost. And similarly, your other overheads like variable overheads or others, we also assume them as fixed cost. For example, if you don't have work, it does not mean that you tell your people to turn off the electricity, turn off the heating or cooling system. Your air conditioners are working, your lighting is working, your heating system is working, whether you work or you don't work, whether you have orders or you don't have orders. Most of these variable overheads, they are going. So we consider them also as fixed cost. So in throughput accounting, you only have, how to say, material as a fixed cost. Now, understand the focus. In activity-based costing, you are calculating cost per unit or, cost per order, whatever. In activity-based costing, you are calculating cost per unit. Whereas in throughput accounting, you are not calculating cost per unit. So it is not said throughput costing, it is throughput accounting. So in throughput accounting, the focus is not on calculating cost per unit. In fact, the focus is on calculating the contribution per hour and cost per hour. And as a result, your throughput accounting ratio per hour. Throughput accounting ratio is, the ratio between your contribution per hour and your cost per hour. And of course, it has to be greater than 1. If the ratio is 1, it means that your hourly cost and your hourly contribution is equal. You are just at, kind of break even, not making anything. So throughput accounting purpose is not to calculate cost per unit. The purpose is to calculate how much do you generate per hour. So we have one, two, three, four, five products, and we calculate their ratios, throughput accounting ratio. So throughput accounting ratio, which you call TPAR, it is a kind of the profitability index. For example, if I have a product A, let me write down here. Do you people see Excel file?
Yes, sir.
So let's suppose I have four products and I have their TPAR. So the purpose here is not to calculate the cost of making these four units. I have come here 1.28, this is 1.32, this is, I don't know, 1.09, and this is 1.41. So by calculating the throughput accounting ratio for these four products, you are actually seeing that which products are more profitable, which products are less profitable. And of course, this is my first choice. This is the highest because the biggest the throughput ratio is, the more profit it is giving. So if I have to make a choice, which one to produce, first I would go for product number D because highest TPR ratio. So when I say 1.41, what does that mean? It means that my contribution per hour is 41% more than my cost per hour. And by the way, I say it, let's suppose TPR per hour, okay? Throughput accounting ratio per hour. Even if I call it throughput accounting ratio per day, or I call it throughput accounting ratio, this is per hour, I call it per day, or maybe I am making throughput accounting ratio per week, whatever you may do, these numbers will remain same, okay? These numbers will not change. I could have said it, but I have just written it so that you never forget. You visually see it. Your throughput accounting ratio does not change, whether you calculate on hourly basis or on daily basis, because it is a ratio. It is not dollars. If you say it is dollars, then of course dollars in 1 hour should be different than dollars in a day, or should be different than dollars in a week. These are not dollars, these are ratio. This is a number. So whatever you will take based on hourly ratio or whatever, or daily or weekly, TPAR should remain same. Now, when I say 1.41, it means that this particular product, which is named D, the product D is giving me, in case of product D, my contribution per hour is 41% more than my cost per hour, which means that if my cost is 100, my contribution is 141. So it is, the ratio is 141 to 100. So for every $100 spent, $141 you make contribution, okay? And naturally speaking, if you speak about this, it means that your contribution is 9% more than your cost, which means that you get 109 after spending 100. So let me write down these numbers here. This is a result of 109 over 100. This is a result of 141 by 100, which means that you are spending 100 here and getting 141. Here you spend 100 and you get only 109. Naturally speaking, C is not the choice. In this case, C is my ranking number 4. Here, this is ranking number 2, I think, and this is number 3. So if I have to make a choice, so throughput accounting, it does not tell you what is the cost of making per unit. It only tells you about the profitability of different products, and it helps you in your production planning where you make your priorities, because we always have limiting factors, and this is where the throughput accounting comes in, because you have limited resources. We call them here bottleneck resource, okay? Bottleneck resource. You always have bottlenecks in your business. You cannot produce anything and everything. There are always limitations. And when there are limitations, you have to make choices, what to make, what not to make. You have to make compromises. You have to make sacrifices. So which product are you going to sacrifice? You definitely are going to sacrifice product number C, because that brings you the minimum return. The minimum return is in case of product number C, the maximum return is given by product number D. So this is a general idea about throughput accounting. Now, what we need to calculate in general, what we know that there is a word which is called, okay, I'm not going to revise the entire lesson. You can go back and watch the lecture. I'm going to do these questions which I have picked up, because we have one complete lecture on throughput accounting, then we also have one revision or recap of throughput accounting. So I don't want to repeat the things again. You already have that video lectures available. So we just want to do the questions, but before we do questions, just one thing I want to emphasize. You should be calculating your contribution. I said contribution per hour, or I said, cost per hour. So you have factory cost per hours and you have contribution per hours. But what does that mean hour? Which hour? Because what will happen that you might be having three departments. You have cutting department, you have stitching department, and then you have probably, I don't know, washing department. And in each department you have different number of hours depending on the equipment which is installed, or depending on the people who are working there. So your number of hours are not same. Like you can say that I have 24 hours per day. You have different hours because of the, we call it installed capacity. You have different installed capacity in each department. You might be having 100 people in cutting department and only 5 people in washing department. So you need to find out what is your bottleneck resource. For example, in cutting you have, I don't know, 1500 hours. Here you have 2250 hours. Here you've got only 1700 hours. And then you say, okay, this department has minimum hours. So if it has minimum hours, is it my bottleneck resource? The answer is a very big no. Never see your bottleneck department or your bottleneck process in terms of available hours. No, you have to see it in terms of the production capacity. It is not about how many hours do you have. It is about how much is the production capacity. Because let's suppose that the units which you produce, each unit, it takes 0.2 hours here. Here, when it goes to stitching, it takes 0.5 hours here. Now, if you see that in 1 hour, you can cut 5 units. But here in 1 hour, you can stitch only 2 units. If I am making these shirts, let's suppose, if I make these shirts, I have a cutting department where I cut, and cutting department has 1500 hours. But the question is, how many shirts can you cut in this department, you see? So if you see here, you have 1500 hours, and when you say that each shirt is taking 0.2 hours, so it means 7500 shirts you can cut. If you talk about stitching, you do have more hours, like 2250, but on the other hand, each unit is also taking more time. So now when I do like this, you see that hours are more here, but output is more here. So that's why I said that your decision about the bottleneck is not based on the number of hours. It is based on the final output which this department can produce. And let's suppose this is 0.25. And if I make like this, it makes like this. So now this stitching department, which you have the maximum number of hours, actually, this is your bottleneck resource. This is your department which has the minimum output capacity. So why do we need that? So we always want to calculate the bottleneck resource, because your revenue or contribution per hour or your cost per hour will be based on this 2250. Okay, 2250 number of hours. Like if I tell you, let's suppose, why do I need it? Let's suppose that if I tell you that your factory fixed costs are, I don't know, let's call it, $100,000. You spend $100,000 fixed cost, and we say this is fixed cost per year, or this is fixed cost per month, whatever. What is the cost per hour? So are you going to divide this 100,000 by 1500? Are you going to divide it by 2250? Are you going to divide it by 1700? Or are you going to divide it by the total of these three? You say fixed cost is 1000, and my question is, what is the fixed cost per hour? Okay, so if I ask you what is the cost per hour, so I know that my total cost is 100,000. If my total cost is 100,000, and then I say that how much is cost per hour, so what comes to your mind, that 100,000 I should divide it by the number of hours. But then which hours? Cutting, stitching, washing, or a total of all three? The answer is that you should be dividing it with 2250. So this is the bottleneck. And you say, okay, my cost per hour is $44. You should be considering $44.2250. This is your cost per hour. So bottleneck, it is very important as part of your calculation of throughput accounting questions. It is very important to identify the bottleneck resource, because all the hourly calculations later on will be done based on the number of hours available in the bottleneck resource. Are we clear on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now this is a very quick recap of throughput accounting. Let me just remove all that. We don't need it. We don't need these numbers, and we start doing the questions. This is question number 19. I'm giving you guys 3 minutes to read it, and then we'll start doing it. Okay, let's read it together. Question number 19, it says that one of the products manufactured by a company is product X, which sells for $40 per unit. So that is the sale price, and has a material cost of $10. So material is $10. And we know that in throughput accounting, only material is the variable cost. Your labor is fixed, variable overhead is fixed, fixed overhead is fixed. We have 4 cost elements: material, labor, variable overhead, and fixed overhead. And only material cost is variable. All others will be assumed to be fixed. So this is $10. Okay. And a direct labor cost of $7 per unit. Okay. The total direct labor budget for the year is 50,000 hours of labor time at a cost of $12 per hour. So this is $7 per unit, but $12 per hour. So it means that one unit might be taking less than 1 hour. And you have budgeted 50,000 hours. Factory overheads are 2.92 million per year, fixed overheads. And they say that the company is considering the introduction of a system of throughput accounting. It has identified that machine time is the bottleneck in production. So it makes it simple. They already have told you which is the bottleneck. Product X needs 0.01 hours of machine time per unit produced. Okay. The maximum capacity for machine time is 4,000 hours per year. And product X needs 0.01 hours of machine time per unit. 0.01 hours. What is the throughput accounting ratio? So you have to calculate TPAR ratio to 2 decimal places. It is very important, because when you will do calculation and you show it in 1 decimal place, you will lose mark. Okay, you have to make it 2 decimal places. Even if your calculator shows an answer of, let's suppose that your calculator shows that 2.1, you will not write down 2.1, you will write down 2.10. Of course, if your calculator is showing you 2.446, okay, so then you have to do round up. You will say it like 2.45. In that case, it is like this. But sometimes your calculator shows 2, exactly 2. So can you write down here exactly 2? If you write down 2, it will be wrong. If it is 2, you should be writing down 2.00, because it says 2 decimal places. Very important instruction in exam. Many students, they make mistake. Calculator shows 2, they write down 2. Okay, we need to calculate throughput accounting ratio. The first thing ever which you do for throughput accounting ratio, you need to calculate your throughput contribution. Okay, so what is your throughput contribution? So throughput contribution, we know that it is always selling price minus material cost, okay? Because material is the only variable cost. And my selling price is 50, material cost is 10, so I can call it 40. No, it is not 50, I'm sorry, it is 40 minus 10, so it is 30. So my throughput contribution is 30, which means that each unit is giving you $30. But this $30 is per unit, okay? So then how much you make per hour? Because ultimately we have to calculate per hour, throughput accounting ratio per hour. So this $30 is per unit, but how much is per hour? How much you can make in 1 hour? Of course, you can make much more than that. So we'll say that throughput contribution per hour, okay? Per hour. Now, when I say per hour, which hours I'm going to speak? Now, in this particular question, they have given you two types of hours. They told you that labor is 50,000 hours. But is it your bottleneck resource? It is not your bottleneck resource. Your bottleneck resource is this. They told you that it is identified that machine time is the bottleneck in production, and product X needs 0.01 hours of machine time, and total machine hours are 4,000. So this is your bottleneck resource. So what you need to calculate now here is, let's suppose that it is taking 0.01 per hour. So I'll say that my 30 divided by 0.01. Okay, if I put it here, what do I get? It makes me 3,000. So it means that for the bottleneck resource, which is your machine, whatever is machine time, you are actually making every 1 hour $3,000. This 3,000 means what? This is your contribution generated. This is the maximum contribution which you can generate. You are not talking about labor, because your bottleneck resource is the machine, and machine time is 0.01 hours per unit. So if 1 unit is giving me 30, it means that within 1 hour, I can make $3,000. $3,000 is your contribution per hour. So one number you have set up. So you always need, actually, if you remember from past, we know that TPAR ratio, the formula is always contribution per hour divided by cost per hour. And by the way, I did not write it. It is contribution per hour on the bottleneck resource and cost per hour on the bottleneck resource. You can add here, your bottleneck resource. Okay, I call it BNR, bottleneck resource. You have to calculate your contribution per hour and cost per hour, and both you should be doing bottleneck resource. Bottleneck resource means whichever is your bottleneck process. So this is the formula. The first thing we have calculated, contribution per hour on the bottleneck resource, we have calculated. Now we need to calculate our cost per hour, okay? So how much are your total costs? Let's first calculate our total costs. So our total costs are, they told us that you have factory overheads are 2.92 million. And then you also have labor, 50,000 hours, and each hour is for $12. So my total cost, now I'm writing it longer. When you will be in exam, because you don't have to show calculation, you don't need to write all of that. Okay, I am explaining you. That's why I am taking more time and putting all the figures in a format. When you will be in exam, you don't need to do that, because in exam, these MCQs, you only need to write down the answer. You don't need to show the calculation. But because I am not doing question, actually I am explaining you, and that's why I have to write down everything. So my labor cost will be 50,000 times 12, okay? Because it is 50,000 labor hours. And $12 is the cost. If I make a total now, so how much it gives me. So now I have my total cost. Okay, this is called total cost. But what do I need? I need cost per hour. And which hour? bottleneck resource. Okay, bottleneck resource. So I would say that it is 3520000 divided by my number of hours are 4000. Bottleneck hours, we discussed that bottleneck hours are 4000. So the same 4000 I divide here. So it comes out to be 880. So now this is the second number we have calculated. These are the two things you need to calculate for your TPR. And now your TPAR, throughput accounting ratio, should be 3000 divided by 880. And that's all. Just put it here. So answer is 3.4090 whatever. And of course, in exam, when it will come, you have to write down in two decimal places. Two decimal places are 3.41. Your answer should appear like 3.41. If you have any question, please ask. Okay, so we are done. So what we should write down? We should write down here 3.41 and you will get your 2 marks. I mean, when you will be in exam and you don't need to show all of this thing like this. You will do it very quickly on calculator and I'm sure you would manage to do it in less time. I took much more time. Now we have question number 20, which it says, are the following statements about material flow cost accounting MFCA true or false? Now this is actually not a question for throughput, but let's read it because it has come in our way, so let's do it. In material flow cost accounting, waste is treated as a negative product and given a cost. Actually, there is a lecture on material cost flow. I have put it sometimes later. When you would be moving on with your syllabus, you would see that lecture. So this statement is actually true because when you do material cost flow accounting, whatever waste is there, you should remember that you should treat it as a negative product. We call it, and given a cost. So that statement is true. Material flow cost accounting should encourage management to focus on ways of achieving the same amount of finished output with less material input. This is also true. I don't want to explain it now because you guys have not seen that video so far. So just let me put these two answers. Both are true. And then we will move forward because our focus today is on throughput accounting. And of course, to some extent, activity-based costing, because we have done these two topics so far. Which of the following statements about ABC costing is true? The cost driver for quality inspection is likely to be batch size. Likely to be batch size, no. Quality inspection is not about batch size, it is about the number of units. The cost driver for material handling and dispatch cost is likely to be the number of orders handled. Yeah, that is the answer. This is possibly the answer. Let's read other options. In the short run, all the overhead costs for an activity vary with the amount of the cost driver for the activity. No, they don't vary. They are strict, these fixed costs. They are like, constant per driver. A cost driver is an activity-based cost. No, cost driver is not a cost. Cost driver is the number of activities. This is also false. So this is the answer. The cost driver for materials handling and dispatch cost is likely to be the number of orders handled. Yes, of course, because the more orders you will handle, the more material cost you will incur. So your material handling cost, it actually depends on the number of orders. Whenever you have to think about these, is it a cost driver or not? Always think like this, that if I increase this thing, will it increase or not? So number of orders handled will increase, material handling cost will also increase. Therefore, they are related and that is the driver. Number 22, we come up. Okay. Okay, so let's read the requirement. It says, which process is the bottleneck? Okay. A very typical question in your F5. They always ask you how to calculate or find the bottleneck process. Let's quickly read question number 22. The following data refers to a soft drinks manufacturing company that passes its product through 4 processes and is currently operating at optimal capacity. Okay, so you have 4 processes: washing, filling, capping, and labeling. And time per dozen, dozen means 12. So time per 12 units is 6 minutes, 6 minutes for every 12 units, 3 minutes for every 12 units, 1.5 minute for every 12 units, and 2 minutes for every 12. And machine hours available: 1200 in washing, in filling 700, in capping 250, and in labeling 450. Okay, now, which is the bottleneck process? Actually, they are asking us. Now, the question is that, if you see that you have more available hours here, bottleneck is, how to say, where your capacity is minimum. Bottleneck is where the output is minimum. So sometimes students, they feel that you have minimum number of hours here. It might be the bottleneck because you have least number of hours here. So might be their output is also minimum. But no, output is not minimum, because you see that if they have less number of hours, actually they are also less time. I mean, here you took 6 minutes to make 12 units or to process 12 units. Here you are taking just 1.5 minutes to process 12 units. You are working much faster here. This capping department is working very fast. So what is the ultimate output? This is what we need to find out. We need to calculate what output they are giving. Okay. So this is 1.5 minutes. How should we do that? We have to put these numbers here, these names. Let me call it, washing. Now you can actually have different ways of doing this question. You can do it much faster. You can do it easily with a simple thing. Let me show you both of them. So you have time taken. Let me call it so that time taken in minutes. Again, you don't have to do it like this in exam. This is just, I am doing it for explaining. In exam, you don't need to make this type of thing, okay? Otherwise, you will be wasting your time in exam. So this is like this, and time per dozen, if I say, okay, this is actually, no, this is machine hours now. Machine hours available. I'm just copy pasting the data so far, okay? 700, 250, and 450. Now you can calculate it in a different way. I know that this is which is given in terms of hours. The problem arises that this is hours and this is minutes. Okay, so either you have to convert minutes into hours, or you have to convert hours into minutes. I mean, you can't just simply multiply or divide this with this, because they have different units. So when you multiply, you need to take care that you are converting them. Either you convert them into minutes or you convert them into hours. Either way, let's suppose if I convert this into minutes, for example, if I say here, not machine hours, but I say machine minutes, okay? So if I want to put machine minutes available, of course, 60 I have to multiply with everything, okay? So I can say like this. So this is the number of minutes which are available. And then time taken is 6. So output. So I have 72,000 minutes here. And 1 dozen, it takes 6 minutes. So if I just multiply this with this, you get 12,000 dozens. So output in dozens, okay? It means that in 72,000 minutes, you can process 12,000 dozens from washing. So washing department can produce 12,000 dozens, and others can produce like this. So if I see that the minimum capacity is coming up with your capping department. Capping department has the lowest output. So I actually, what I did, because I know that this is in minutes, this is in hours, I cannot simply divide these two numbers. I can actually, but then I need to multiply or divide with 60. When you would be in exam, you should be doing it with, for example, you cannot say 1200 divided by 6. Your answer would be wrong, because this 6 is what? 6 is minutes and 1200 is hours. So you should be doing in exam 1200 multiplied by 60 divided by 6. Okay, something like this. If you make it like this on your calculator, you will get the same answer. I'll show you what I did. If I'm in exam, I'm of course not making table. So what I would say that, okay, this is 1200 hours multiplied by 60, which makes it minutes, and then divided by 6. And here I would say 700 hours multiplied by 60. I convert it into minutes and then divided by 3. So if I put it here, it gives me the same answer. So you have to be quick in exam. Okay, so don't need to make full this table, just make this calculation on your calculator. It will be much faster. So in any case, they ask us that which process is the bottleneck, and our answer is that capping process is the bottleneck, because capping has the minimum capacity. Minimum capacity is your bottleneck resource. Any question you want to ask? Nothing?
So the 12,000, do you mind explaining how you get it again?
12,000 is output in dozens. For example, you have 72,000 minutes available with you, and 1 dozen is taking 6 minutes. So how many dozens you can produce? So you have a total 72,000. I just divided these two, 72,000 with 6. This 12,000, how do I get that? 72,000 number of total minutes divided by minutes taken per dozen. So when I get the number, this 12,000, what is this 12,000? This is 12,000 dozens processed by washing department. So you have 4 departments, and now you have their capacities. You can say that based on their speed, and based on the available number of, and based on available time, number of hours or whatever, this is what I can process. My washing department will process 12,000 dozens. My filling department will process 14,000 dozens. My capping department is producing just 10,000 dozens, and labeling is producing 13,500 dozens. And I know that dozen means 12 unit. Okay, dozen means 12 units. So when you put 12 units together, you call it a dozen. So actually, what is the output? If you ask me what is the total number of units produced, I should say 12,000 multiplied by 12. And this department is making 14,000 multiplied by 12. And this department is going to make 10,000 into 12. And this department is going to make 13,500 dozens. Each dozen is 12 unit. And that is going to give you, how to say, the final capacity. But of course, because you multiply all of them with 12, still this will be the smallest one, because this is number of dozens. So minimum, that is your, if you want to say, okay, how much is my output? How much is my final output? Number of units. So I multiply with 12. So your final output is 144,000 units. 12,000 dozens means 144,000 units. And here you can see that the lowest number of units are produced by this department, 120,000. That's your bottleneck, capping. Important thing to take care in this question is this minutes and hours. Okay. Then we come to question number 23. The following statements have been made about throughput accounting. Inventory has no value and should be valued at 0. Efficiency is maximized by utilizing direct labor time and machine time to full capacity. Which of the above statements are true? I don't think so anyone is true. It says inventory has no value. No, this is not written in anywhere in throughput accounting that inventory has no value. That's not the scope of throughput accounting. So that statement is wrong. And efficiency is maximized by utilizing direct labor time and machine time to full capacity. No, not direct labor time and machine time. Actually, efficiency is maximized by utilizing the bottleneck resource to the maximum. Not about labor or machine hours, but about the bottleneck the resource. So answer should be neither one nor two. Both statements are wrong. Next is 24. Which two of the following statements about ABC are true? Okay, again another question from ABC comes, and which two statements are true? Okay. Implementation of ABC is unlikely to be cost effective when variable production costs are a low proportion of total production costs. Uh, Actually, this is wrong because it is only discussing about variable production cost at a low proportion of total production cost. Activity-based costing speaks about overheads, okay, not variable production cost. It speaks about total overheads. So it could be ineffective. Actually, is unlikely to be cost effective means it says that in a simple language that implementation of ABC is ineffective. Okay, unlikely to be effective. It is the style of ACCA that they say that, unlikely to be effective. I mean, they could have written it is ineffective. I mean, it is the same word, okay? Unlikely to be effective or it is ineffective. So I can read that implementation of ABC is ineffective, which means that is not desirable, which means that it is not good when variable production costs are a low proportion of total production overhead. No, if I put here overheads, if I put the word overheads, this statement becomes true, okay? Just because ABC costing says that if your overheads are small, if your overheads are little, then do not implement ABC because ABC has huge cost for implementation. And we only implement ABC when you have large pool of overheads. If you have very small overheads, then it is not suitable. So this question, it says that if variable production costs are small as compared to total production cost, ABC is ineffective. So they are actually changing the focus. The focus is that, yes, we do talk about some proportion of total production cost, but that's not about variable production cost, that is about overhead. So if you put the word here overhead, then this statement would become true. So far, now it is wrong. In a system of ABC, for costs that vary with production levels, the most suitable cost driver is likely to be direct labor hours or machine hours. Yeah, that is true. I mean, if you have any particular cost which increase with the production level, for such cost, machine hours or labor hour is a good measure because as machine hours and labor hour will go up, the cost will go up. Remember previous question, I said that cost driver, always think like what should be or could be my cost driver. A cost driver should be that element. When you increase that, your cost increases. So if I put machine hours as my cost driver or labor hour as my cost driver, so as as my number of machine hours or labor hours will go up, my production level or my cost will go up. So that's correct answer. Then it says activity-based costing are the same as relevant cost. No, absolutely not. Relevant cost is an entirely different thing. I mean, no, nothing. I don't need to even read it full. Activity-based costing is a form of absorption costing. Yes, that is true. This is where we started our every lecture for ABC, that it is an advanced form of absorption costing. So this is true and this is true. Then you have in environmental costing. Now, again, we have not done environmental costing yet. So we can just leave this question. You can refer to this, and it's not really difficult, but you should refer to it once you are done with environmental costing.
Okay, just continue.